Hello and welcome. This is Shanna today, and I'm so glad you stopped by. Today we're celebrating Trinity Stamp's March release with a YouTube hop, where you have a chance to win a $25 gift certificate by hopping along all the stops. You can check out all the details below in the description box. So let's get started. Today I'm going to be playing with the new Party Snake stamp set and die. This was a previous free with purchase stamp that's being re-released from the vault. That's the A2 Modern Embossed Window Die number 2. This is a sheet of 6x6 paper from the double scoop pack and a piece of scrap glossy black cardstock. Off screen, I went ahead and Copic colored and die cut a couple of the snakes that are absolutely adorable. I did one in kind of a rainbow ombre look and then one in more of that yellow-green traditional. So now I'm going to go ahead and die cut this Modern Embossed window. You're going to see I get the window panel and then that negative circle. I do intend on making 2 cards today. You'll see that I really wanted to use that circle in my second design. It doesn't make it onto it, but it does get tucked away for future use. So I grabbed another piece of A2 cardstock, just white, to go behind my window because I'm going to make a shaker, and then I used another white base to go with that circle. We're going to use one of the flat acetate shaker windows, but without actually folding it into a flat shaker. I'm going to use it to cover the window. But first, I'm going to grab this balloon stencil. This is the Celebration Balloons Coordinating Stencil Set. Goes with some dies also in the shop. And I'm just going to add some balloons to the background. It's a party snake. He needs some balloons. So I grabbed my blending buddies and I didn't actually re-ink them. This is one of my favorite things to do since I keep a blending brush dedicated to each color family. I don't clean them typically because they only get used on the Distress Oxides. So I'm just using the leftover ink here and going over it once, a little light, and then I'm going back with that same brush and darkening it for the highlight pieces. I like doing this when I'm in a hurry or when I'm not truly picky about what colors I'm pulling. So this could be a mix of colors, we don't know, but the color family is just fine for me. This long squiggly balloon, I love how it fills almost an entire A2 length. It is adorable, and purple's my favorite color, so I couldn't resist. You can see on the stencil the outline because it is etched for each balloon, so lining it up for those highlight pieces is a cinch. After the balloons, I bring back that circle. So this print, I love it. The whimsical circles, everything, but I could not, for some reason, bring myself to use it on this card. I tried all sorts of ways. I'm bringing on the snake kind of where I wanted him to go on the card, and then I'm seeing, do I like the flip side, which is like a ice cream texture? No, didn't really like that. So then I go back to the circles. Maybe I want to fold it in half and only use half of it. That could be kind of cute. This is how I design, folks. It's not always pretty. I do kind of like the shape, but the pattern was throwing me. I'm a very symmetrical crafter, so sometimes I just can't wrap my head around it. So when in doubt, I go to black. I needed something to anchor the snake so he didn't just float on the paper. In this case, I chose to use the sentiment. So here I am putting the 2 sentiments from that party snake set I'm going to use on my card, and I'm going to stamp them directly onto that glossy black cardstock using some ink on 3 juicy ink. It's one of my favorite embossing inks. It truly doesn't fail me. I did go in with an anti-static tool first, especially on glossy cardstock. That is something you're going to want to do because embossing powder loves to stay on it. I will typically use my Misty to stamp onto glossy cardstock because truly it gets a little slick. But for these 2 sentiments, I was brave and it worked out just fine. You just need to go straight down and straight up. You don't want to wiggle or push too hard or you will slip on the glossy and it'll smear your sentiment. So I'm coming in with some Arctic White ink on 3 embossing powder and just tapping off the excess, and then I'm going to go ahead and heat set that. I love watching embossing powder melt. It's one of my favorite things in the craft world. So I had to show a little snippet. So we're using Celebration Salutations and Let's Party. Gotta love the S's for the snake. The coordinating die set actually includes the dies to cut out the sentiments too, which works perfectly because it's going to make that sentiment strip for my snake. Going to buff off that anti-static powder just using a dry cloth, and then line up my dies and die cut out the sentiments. As a crafter, I really appreciate coordinating dies for sentiments. It just looks super clean and classy to me. So I'm going to bring over that long sentiment back to this card, and you can see how it just gives a little bit of ground for that snake to sit on. I'm going to grab some of the skinny foam strips from the Trinity shop and add them for some dimension onto the back. I love how slim and skinny these are because they fit on almost everything without a whole lot of finagling. I can even curve them around this snake. Some tips and tricks to working with foam tape on shaped images, or in this case rounded images, is it helps a lot to peel off release tape sometimes if you are having trouble turning it. This turned relatively well for me, so I didn't really have to do that today, but in the past for some other shapes, that is absolutely my go-to trick. If you take both pieces of release paper, so yes, you're working with a sticky piece of foam tape, but it curves a lot better. Really helpful for shakers and such. So I'm going to make sure to give a little bit of support to those balloons so they don't get flattened when in the envelope. Need just a little more of the foam. And then I'm going to pop it right back into place on the card, sitting right on top of that sentiment. After attaching the elements to the front, I went ahead and mounted it onto a A2 size piece of yellow cardstock to pretty much complete that card. I do prefer the Crafty Glue Friend for my glue in this case because it gives me the maneuverability to make sure I'm centered, because heavens knows I'm not always centered when I set something down, so I like wiggle room. Wet adhesive is pretty much always my choice. So moving on to card number 2, my shaker card, I went ahead and grabbed that flat shaker window, and we're going to use it just as a sheet of plastic in this case. It is the perfect size to cover this circle. You could turn it in to the flat shaker and set it on top as well if you used the circle we cut earlier in it, but I just wanted a window to make more of a traditional shaker. So I went ahead and grabbed that Crafty Glue Friend again and just put it on all of those little tabs. After I got all the way around with all the tabs, I went ahead and added a acrylic block down to weigh it down until it dried. That just makes sure all of the glue has contact with the paper. This paper is coated. It's a glossy paper, which I love to look at. I don't always love to try and glue things to. It doesn't always want to work because things slip. But that's why I also use a really strong adhesive. So waiting for it to dry didn't take super long. I went ahead and did that, and then I'm doubling up some foam tape strips, and I'm going to create like a square around that circle just to contain my sequins. So making sure it's just a double thickness. So I folded some back on top of each other and then just went all the way around. After I finished adding all the foam tape, I removed all of the release paper, and then I added my sequins mix. In this case, it was Stage Lights and Cottage Candy, I believe, or Candy Cottage, which is another sequin mix that has these cute little stars in it that I thought complemented the colors in the pattern paper really well and the rainbow hues of the snake. So I mixed those two together. I'm pretty generous when I do my shakers. Some people like a lot, some people like a little. I'm probably somewhere in between both. Finished removing all of the release paper, and then I just line up that back panel with that card, and it seals onto it to contain the shaker. Make sure to smooth it all out so you get good adhesion, and shake, shake, shake. I love how shakers work. Now I'm going to bring back in that snake and decide where I want him to go. So I have the snake and the sentiment, and now I'm kind of playing around. I liked how they kind of went side by side. In this case, I didn't think the card needed any additional dimension because I already have the thickness added from the double thick tape for the shaker. So I went just straight in with my glue friend and attached it straight to the card. Little bit of glue goes a long way for this, but since there is some difference in height between the paper and the acetate, I do weigh it down again with an acetate block to glue. I'm pretty much a stickler. I do that a lot in my crafting just to make sure I get an even weight when I'm going to glue something down, since I use wood adhesive so much. Doing the same with that sentiment, and they just go side by side and it finishes off the card. Thank you guys so much for stopping by today. Be sure to check out the description box below and hop on to the next stop. The shop is also live with the new release, so be sure to head over there and check out all the brand new product. Thanks again, guys. Bye-bye.